Hello and welcome to the Next 100 Days podcast. My name is Graham Arrowsmith.
And my name's Kevin Appleby. So, Graham, you're looking a bit different today. Something gone wrong?
Very much wrong. Today is the day when Virgin Media have disconnected the internet from where I work, and so basically we're hotspotting. So it's maybe not the normal quality at this end.
So this just tells you how reliant on broadband and so on we have become these days.
Yeah, it's sad, but it's true. I mean, and we basically communicate an awful lot to clients via Zoom and things like that. And so basically it is disappointing, but I know they'll have to do their own maintenance of the local area, etc. And I'm sure they'll be having cups of tea on the way through until they fix it later on today. So,
and no doubt everything for your summit, Graham, is in the cloud, so you can't get anywhere near any of that.
Well, apart from using the hotspot, which I'm using my mobile data to actually record this podcast today. So I'm sure there will be a way around this.
Yeah, indeed. But Graham, we talked a couple of weeks ago about that summit, and you told us all about what was going on, why you were doing it, what the content was. But last week we got into a little bit more of the design of it. We were talking about the graphics, and we spoke to Anna in Ukraine.
Yeah.
But you've put this summit together, and a lot of other people must be looking at summits as a possible way to market whatever they do. How do you actually go about putting a summit together, Graham?
That's a good question. And I was saying earlier before we got cut off that I had a call the other day from somebody who wanted to get onto this summit. And I think the point is, it's not something that you dreamt up 2 days ago and then here it is. I mean, if you were able to do that, then great, but it's just not possible.
And I know that you've been working this for what must be 3-4 months putting it together.
Easily, yeah.
You lined up all the guests ages ago.
Yeah, I mean, if you start from the sort of beginning, I guess it was last September. I went across to Orlando to see Dan Kennedy, and it was part of the funnel hacking live conference at the Marriott there in Orlando. And I chose not to go to funnel hacking because I just didn't have any kind of connection at that point to ClickFunnels. But I did have a connection to Dan Kennedy, and I wanted to be able to see and hear him speak, etc. And it was a joyous occasion. But I went away and had a couple of days sort of wandering around Florida before the flight home again. And somewhere, either on the flight home or a couple of weeks later, it sort of dawned on me that, hold on a minute, maybe I should have stayed and actually experienced ClickFunnels, because basically there was some connection in my mind that said, if there's a way in which we can actually reverse the logical way in which I normally work, which is somebody comes to me and they say, can you find me affluent investors, for instance, for this particular opportunity? And the typical way is either sending them a letter, calling them, or sending an email. And a lot of people want to send emails, Kevin. Now, generally speaking, there's an awful lot of what I would call redundancy in that. So in other words, the communications themselves, for a lot of people, are redundant. It's just not relevant to me at this stage. I'm not ready. I don't have a requirement. So like many marketers have found that if you kind of almost like reverse that by providing some value first and attracting people to the value, then it stimulates their interest in a range of things that are relevant to them at that moment. So, for instance, earlier today, I've been working on an email to potentially an audience of landlords. Now, recently, many landlords, for a number of reasons, have been exiting being landlords. There's so many there's tax changes that they've had to put up with, rising interest rates, etc. There's lots of little reasons adding up to them thinking, just don't want to do this anymore. And one of the most important reasons is their yield. And yields have been sort of coming down. So landlords are starting to think, well, maybe I bail. And I came across somebody was telling me about something like this the other day, and just trying to sell the whole stock of properties to somebody. Now, in other words, people are bailing from that particular area. So what do they do next? So those people, there is they might not have exited being a landlord at this stage, but they might be thinking about it. So what can you do from a summit point of view is provide them with some sort of what to do next. So that connection, shall we say, of reversing the way in which I do my marketing, or at least some of it, is what started this whole process. But then I needed the next step, really. So there was if you like, the awareness of the issue, which was, can I do something better from a marketing point of view? The next step was, who do I get to help me? And it happens to be, happened to be a young lady who's in her mid-30s, and she is probably one of the world's experts when it comes to funnels, and in particular, summit funnels. And she helps ClickFunnels owner Russell Brunson with his funnel. So that's quite an accolade. So he basically passes that responsibility off to her. And her name is Bailey Richert. And Bailey may well become a future guest on this podcast. But in the meantime, I took on Bailey's course. It was called a virtual summit school. So I went back to school, Kevin, which for you and me is a long time ago. But the whole purpose of the school was to coach you through a number of things that you would want to master. And so, for instance, the school itself, there was a number of it. So it was like lots of different interviews, so like a membership site that you would recognize, Kevin. And basically within that, there was lots of videos that said, well, this is what you do at this particular stage. And these are the things that I recommend, and so forth and so on. So basically, you've got lots of information there. So I wasn't inventing all of this. I was following almost like a template. But within that template, boy, there was so much. Don't get me wrong, Bailey was and is being a great help to me. But there is so much, shall we say, in the detail that you're learning as you're doing it. So you pointed out earlier that one of the things that we need to do is, if you're putting on a summit, is to have summit guest speakers. So contacting those people was, I thought it might be a lot easier than it turned out to be. Would you like to spend a little bit of time recording for want of a better term, a podcast? It's not quite. It's an interview, and effectively, then the only responsibility you've got there is from that point, is to promote the actual summit. So let me try and get this clear in the minds of people listening. The summit itself is a collection of maybe somewhere between 10 and 30 guest speakers. Now, they're experts in the field that you're interested in. So in my case, alternative investments, gold, property, venture capital, investing in new companies, that kind of thing. And we've got other people on there like films and all kinds of different alternative investments. So these people are all expert in their own particular fields. So I needed to get in touch with them and invite them to join this particular summit. But for many of them,
that's a challenge, isn't it? Because we've been running a podcast now for getting on towards 8 years.
Yeah.
And a few of the episodes we've done like this, it's you and I talking to each other, but the vast majority of those episodes have had guests on.
Yeah.
Now, we know those times that we've got to our regular recording slot on a Thursday and, the guest doesn't turn up, or, we haven't got a guest this week. It's a challenge just to get one guest per week to keep the recording going. Now, suddenly you've got to get 22. Well, how many were you aiming for originally? I know you ended up with, I think, 2.
Yeah, we ended up with 22, and there were a few people I thought were going to join, but for whatever circumstances didn't. So it probably would have topped out at 25, maybe. But the maximum that is 30. I barely would advise anybody doing a summit, don't go for more than 30. And I get it. I completely get it, because it's overwhelming.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah, because effectively you're talking about, but it's, and the key thing here is it's not 22 interviews. It's 22 guests where you interview them twice. So it's the first interview is the, shall we say, the free interview. And that interview is where we're talking about their particular alternative investment in this particular case. But it could be anything. If you think about your own subject, if you're listening to this right now or watching it on YouTube or whatever, what is your particular audience engaged with? I mean, what are you trying to solve for them? And if you brought together a number of people who might be interested, and the classic thing is your own business, Kevin. You're helping people in the, who are financial officers, if you like, chief financial officers. Then they will be interested in a range of things in and around their skill set. That might be mindset. It might be the absolute, the detail of their jobs, etc.
That's a field of people that would commonly have before the pandemic gone along and maybe attend a 1 day or a 2 day conference. Effectively, what you're doing here is bringing that 2 day conference, or in the case of your summit, I think it's 3 days, Graham.
It is.
And you're doing it entirely online.
Yes, it is entirely online. And the benefit of that is that people can watch, at home or in their office, and they can actually consume that material there and then. And we get to another part to this is that they might have other alternatives as well, but we'll come to that in a second. But if the core thing is you gather together somewhere between 15 or so, maybe 10 to 30 guest speakers. Each one does a free to air interview, and then a second bonus interview, which is locked in a private members area, and there's a good reason for that. So
there's all those podcast skills that you've honed over the last 7-8 years coming to their own.
Yeah,
but you're talking 22 guests, 44 interviews. Okay, a lot of work just doing the interviews.
Yeah,
and we both know the effort that goes into post-production when we're putting one of these shows out. So effectively, you're doing that 44 times. At least with that bit, Graham, you should know exactly what you're doing.
Yeah,
but you've got these 44 videos. What do you now do with them?
Well, I mean, the thing about that, Kevin, is that our podcast is we share up some of the work that goes in and around that production. You do certain things, I do other things, etc. So it's a bit like me not only doing the bits that I got, but I had to do the things that you're good at as well. And basically, it was quite a challenging learning curve, because and you literally had to go back to school. And obviously, we do things in a certain way, but the videos themselves, for instance, if you take the videos, right? So how would you do that? Well, you do that probably via Zoom, just like we're doing now. So effectively, you record those videos. Yes, you would probably, a bit like us, we don't particularly script. We have an idea of what we're going to do, but we don't script. But it's good advice to actually not script it down to the last question, but to get a pretty good idea of what you want to get from that guest speaker. And these guest speakers, they're often tapped up by lots of people. To do all kinds of things like this, and you can't just sort of roll up and say, "By the way, I've got this summit. When can we record an interview?" Because they're going to laugh at you. You've got to persuade them to join.
Yeah,
and from my point of view, it felt like I had to persuade somebody to, because effectively at the end of it, you want to find them clients potentially who want to invest in their alternative. So you'd think you'd be pushing an open door, but no, you're not. Some people wanted to be
I can see that. You take the podcast. Half of our guests will come from people approaching us, because
Yes.
300 or 400 episodes into a show, you've got a certain amount of reputation, you've got an audience, and there's a lot of people that are going out of their way to be on podcasts with decent history, decent circulation. There are podcast agents that put people forward for shows.
Yeah, that's right.
And there are folk that we know. And if you think back, Michael Heppel at Christmas, I joined his Team 17. And as a result of being in Team 17 and saying, oh, I'm booking a new series of podcast guests. Anybody want to be on the show? Bang. You can guarantee half a dozen people will put their hands up and say, yes, please.
Yeah.
You're promoting a summit now. You've never done one before.
No.
Nobody knows what this is.
No. Like
yeah,
and they don't necessarily know me. The benefit that I had perhaps over other people is that, to your point, is that you do have a body of work. You have if anybody was put Graham Arrowsmith into Google, you'll find lots of hits for the next 100 days. And therefore anybody, you're not a non-entity, shall we say. But for those people who really don't have that, shall we say, body of work at this stage, but they still want to do a summit, then there are ways in which you can approach guest speakers in an appropriate way. And the key thing is to get their interest, but also be respectful of their time. Because if you can do that, then it shows that they know that you are a professional. The other thing that you want to do before you approach them is to figure out some of the logistics. So, for instance, if you're going to put on the podcast, the summit in, I don't know where we're recording this in July 23, but let's just say you're going to put it on in, for the sake of argument, February 24. Now, you want to know exactly when you're going to do it. You want to know exactly whether it's a 3-day thing. You want to know the format of it. You want to know what you want to get out of it, etc. There are some questions that you need to know before you approach a guest speaker. Now, in my case, it was fairly clear what I wanted. I wanted to be able to have a conversation about their alternative investment, which would enable people to learn more. Because the research that I'd done into my market was that so many people, investors, just hadn't invested in alternatives. Yes, they've invested in, in stocks and shares, bonds and so forth, and traditional investments, just like me. But alternatives, in the past, yes, but not currently. So, and, one of the things that I'm going to be doing following the summit conclusion is to invest in at least one of those guest speakers. So that's my sort of internal commitment. But the point about guest speakers is that you really do want people who are kind of expert, as good a person in that field as anybody that you potentially could get. But here's the key thing, and this is one of the things that Bailey shares. It's like a hierarchy. If you call it an A level, if you had an A level podcaster, Kevin, who comes to mind?
Oh, there's people like Johnny Dumas these days. Way back in the past, I'd say our old friend Jason Van Orden, but Jason hasn't seriously for a long time.
No, you are absolutely right. There are those types of people, and then and there are possibly other people like I don't know, all kinds of different people around the world, but people will have favorite podcasts, etc. And the ones that are getting millions of Joe Rogan, for instance, probably the biggest podcaster of the lot. Yeah. So that's, if you like, your A level podcaster, and then there's the B level, and then there's a C level. Now, the C level, they're kind of they're almost, they haven't really quite got started. So so basically, can you get some of those B level influencers, shall we say, those people who are doing it like you and me? I would say that we haven't just started, as you said, 7-8 years, etc. And we've got a body of work that we can show people. Plus, when it comes to dealing with alternative investments, etc., I've been doing this for 9 years. So from that point of view, you combine that in my business side of it, plus the podcasting side, then you've got the formula effectively for a summit in this area. That's why I've chosen to do that. So the key thing is, if you can get those sorts of levels of a guest speaker, then you're much more likely to get their commitment to do this one thing that is really critical: promote. The A-level guys, let's just say we got Joe Rogan on as a guest speaker. Now that might be great, but the chances of them promoting your particular summit might be rare. They might turn up, but they'll be turning up for their own benefits rather than necessarily yours. So yes, they'll feature with you, but will they actually promote the podcast? And that's key. And the reason for that, try again, will they promote the summit? And it, rather than the podcast, I'm getting these things mixed up because we're on this podcast. But the summit itself, old age as well. And the key for why would you want some of the people in your guests to promote it is because they can bring an audience to this summit experience. So that's what's
if you've been selling things, marketing things for years and years, you'll realize that every time you market yourself, you're promoting whatever it is, probably largely the same audience that you promoted to last time. The beauty about going on a podcast and talking about your product is you talk to the podcast audience about it. You go on a summit, you talk to the summit's audience. Now, if you bring your audience with you and 20 other people bring their audiences with them, some of that is actually quite powerful. That brings a lot of people into the fold, Graham.
Yeah, I mean, the commercial goal for me is that if somebody is interested in a particular alternative investment, let's say that's Matt Futner's AI-powered foreign exchange trading bot. It's a mouthful, but let's assume it's that. And there are reasons why people would want to invest in that area. Why? Because there's some very, very good returns, etc. It's a high risk thing, but there's good returns. Now, assuming that somebody took an interest in that, then at some stage down the line, Matt would reward my business with an introductory commission. So it's not necessarily straight away, but after a period. And I'm quite happy about that. But the more important thing for me is not so much the commission. Obviously, got to live, but it's almost like the joy of creating a marketing entity that is delivering for your clients. So that really does, get me out of bed because effectively I can work every day towards improving my craft for my clients. So yes, I can do an email campaign, but I know there's a lot of redundancy in that. People are just not ready, and so few people say yes. Whereas the other way around, the people who come and consume that content freely, no obligation, it's free, etc. They can watch what they like on those 3 days. But if they don't buy, then there's no harm, there's nothing. But if they are interested, then it's that we can put them through to the relative, whether that's gold or whether it's the film about Harold Wilson. There's all kinds of there's alternatives which are really appealing. And the thing about the second interviews, it's almost like the first interview got the guests going, but the second interviews, they were absolutely flying. And so, if you are going to effectively join up with this summit, and make sure you get the all access pass, because that's when you get real value, Kevin.
Yeah. Now that's bringing me on to my next question, Graham, that says, okay, summit, you've got that traditional marketing model where somebody comes along and pays you money to run a campaign.
Yes.
Okay. Some of it might be a fee, a normal business. Some of it might be based in some way on the success of the campaign.
Yeah.
Okay. Flip that around. The summit, you might not be getting an investor to invest money for now. That might be 6 months down the road. You put a lot of into this summit. So how does this summit actually fund itself? You're giving free access to this.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right.
How does the economics of the summit actually work out?
Well,
not necessarily this one, but in general, what's the financial model around a summit? How do you make it pay for all the effort you put in?
Well, the primary source of revenue will be at the back end, for want of a better term. So in other words, somebody's made a commitment to do something based on the summit's offer. So if, in other words,
there's some sort of affiliate commission because they've bought something.
You call it you'd probably call it more of an introduction commission. So basically, somebody at the end of it has said, I want to buy that thing, whatever that thing is. In this particular case, it's an alternative investment. And that might be a property investment. It might, whatever it is, golds, all that kind of thing. So basically, they would reward for bringing a new client. And who wouldn't? At the end of the day, here's a shiny new client who's interested in your particular product. And they got interested because there was a conversation between you and me in a friendly, fairly structured, but friendly way. And they liked you. And that's key when it comes to actually somebody buying you. They liked you, and they trust what your product's about. So then they'll have a conversation. They don't throw their money straight in, but they'll have a conversation. But the guys at the other end knew that it came from me. So that yes, you do have to wait a while, but there's another source of income as well, and that other source of income is what I was sort of referring to a bit earlier, to do with the so when you structure your interviews with your guest speakers, do two of them. The first one is the free one, and often those are really good interviews. They are, and they get across the message. But as I've said, it's almost like you get them flying on the second one. And many of the second interviews that I did, I asked the speaker to share the screen, because some of them have these platforms that they well, look, if you buy gold from us, then Hamza was talking about his minted platform, and effectively he was showcasing the platform actually from his mobile, which is a clever chap. But so basically, and he was showing us how that worked. So but also the strategies that you would use to in this case invest in gold. But when it came to the film, we had two of the creators on that interview. And they just, they shared so much information. And in that genre of political films, they couldn't find one that had ever lost money. And, when you start thinking about that, and I've invested in the film before, and it was a hopeless loss. It was just, it was badly produced in a sense, but and I was an extra in it, so that's probably the reason that it lost money. But
I always said you had a face for radio.
Yeah, well, I had air then. So, anyway, the thing about it is that that lost money, but it didn't cost me a huge amount. But it just anyway. So the point that I'm trying to get to is that the second interviews are often steeped in value. So if you can communicate that to your audience, and we're going back to revenue now, then an all access pass enables you to build some value in that for a purchase. So in the case of what Bailey suggests, this is the guru of summits, she suggests that you have a price for the all access pass up until the date of the live event. And as soon as it goes live, you put the price of the all access pass up to a different level, not down, up. So basically, in my case, it's £39 until the 10th of July. Then on the 10th of July, it goes to £49. And then it's £49 just for 3 days, because whilst you're watching it, you're thinking, oh, I missed that day. I really would like to see more of this. And you've seen a number of the interviews, and you kind of liked it, but you want the more in-depth one. So then you buy it at £49 because you haven't made that decision beforehand, because you haven't really seen any of the interviews. Then, after the summit has closed on the Wednesday, the 12th of July, then the price goes up again. In this case, it goes from 39 to 49 to 59, so £59. So if you miss the summit entirely, then the price for that access that would get you the 22 free interviews, 22 bonus interviews, the MP3s, so you can actually listen to it on the go, and for things like transcripts, that type of thing. All of that comes for £59. Now, relatively, that's a small amount of money, especially if it gives you the inside track to some very, very interesting alternative investments where you can make quite a lot of money. So and that's
you're looking for something to pay for itself initially on the basis of the size of the audience that you get to buy the all access pass.
It would be nice, but I think the important thing for me in this first one is the learning side. I think it probably will pay for itself, but the more important thing for me is there a learning there that is applicable to other things that I can do? So, and there is an investment side to this, and I'm investing in this new track for me, and it might be the same for somebody else who's doing something completely different, and it might be something to do with coaching, so you're offering maybe coaching in I don't know, maybe the whole idea of mindset. So you've got maybe different people who can give you different attitudes, if you like, different communications in this whole idea. We've had people on our podcast who are coaches, and if you almost like draw a little spider gram around them and what they offer, you could bring in a number of people who can give a much broader view of a particular topic. We've talked in the past about doing corporate escape stories, Kevin. And there's so many different angles on that.
Yeah. And I think sometime in the future, Graham, if you've got the hang of doing summits, that we should come together and maybe think about that summit on corporate escape. I think it could be really interesting to do. I think it's going to be a lot of hard work if we did it, but
hard work. There'll be two of us doing it.
So go back to the financials, Graham. So essentially, the individuals can go in and do this free. They can pay for the access pass, which is a relatively small amount of money for a lot of content.
Yeah.
The participants aren't paying anything to be part of the summit.
No, and actually, more than one actually said, "Do I pay you?" And I said, "No, of course not. No, you wouldn't do that. What your obligation is to promote the summit. So and the promotion of the summit is, shall we say, offset by their opportunity to have an affiliate income from that. So, for instance, let's just say that Luke DeStefano promotes to his HJC collection investors, and a number of those then become investors or sign up for the registration, and then sign up for the the all access pass, etc. Then basically Luke would get half of that income. So the commission is half. So I get less than half because I have to pay some of the bills associated with that half, like Stripe fees.
There's all sorts of initiatives to get the guests to promote, because one of the things you really want is them to bring their audience along.
Yeah. But and it doesn't happen automatically.
You've done. Supposing you've done the Alternative Investment Summit 2023, the Alternative Investment Summit 2024, which was a roaring success. You go along to the Alternative Investment Summit 2025 with all of this track record behind you. There is a potential with that sort of track record that you could say, you want to be part of this.
Yeah.
There's a cost.
Well, I probably wouldn't do that. I know it's tempting to think you could do that. I think it's about a relationship as well. When you're building your guest list, I won't get ahead. I understand why that question's been asked and in that way, but that's not the goal. Ultimately, is you're serving the people who are, in my case, who are the providers of alternative investments. So I wouldn't want to charge them for that privilege, although you could do. But it's not something that I would want to do, because I think, from my point of view, if it's working really well and everybody is cheerfully promoting it, then together you've got this, what I would call a Jacob's join, where everybody is thrown in and you've got a large audience who they might have property investors over there, or gold investors over here, or film investors over there, etc. And they've all come in, but they might have other alternatives that they might be interested in. So from that point of view, so for instance, if you're a buy-to-let investor, you might be quite interested in furnished lodges. It's still kind of buy-to-let, but it's a market that's got a slightly better return and a brilliant exit package. So basically, something that, so I guess up to a point, no, I wouldn't necessarily charge them up front. I don't think that would be recommended, but I would say that, you know, you have to find ways of getting the majority of the guest speakers to promote, because if you don't, then the audience just isn't going to be there apart from your own self-promotion. And that's what I'm in the middle of right now, sending emails, sending, you know, social, etc., doing other things to promote the summit. And frankly, the success of it will be based on the number of people who are attracted to it.
Yeah. Now you're putting the summit together specifically to market the products that the individual presenters come along with. Yeah. I suppose a twist on this, if I was doing this to a CFO audience, now a lot of the people I might bring along to a summit might have information to pass over, but might not necessarily have products to sell. So I suppose an alternative way around that model is you could, in our Grow CFO context, go along and say to some of the finance system providers, do you want to sponsor the summit? Or do you want to sponsor some aspect of the summit? So that's potentially in a summit event, that could be another income stream.
I think you would probably do that, to your point earlier about, you know, first one, okay, second one, great, third one, brilliant, fourth one, well, you know, here's a sponsor opportunity. Of course, I'll sponsor it. And they've got different areas. So that's another income stream, and it's something that is not really recommended for your first one, because, you know, there's no track record there. I mean, we have a track record, but it doesn't necessarily translate to me doing
exactly.
So if next year it's a rip-roaring success, or this year's a rip-roaring success, that's your evidence for somebody to put some money into. Because, you know, people have got sponsorship money for all kinds of reasons, but they want evidence. They don't just want to throw it away. They're not trying to make you happy. It's an investment from their point of view. So if there's an audience that's relevant to them, that their sponsorship would actually generate income for them, then great. I mean, that would be ideal. So yes, that is definitely an income stream that you'd look at.
Yeah. So Graham, behind all of this, there's got to be some tech to actually make it work. I know you've mentioned ClickFunnels already.
Yes.
I'm guessing that ClickFunnels is a major part of making this work. So
yes.
What is ClickFunnels?
ClickFunnels is a funnel software. So basically, what that means is that it's a website producing software that basically links together. So, for instance, what I got with Bailey's course was a template that was actually set up. So the website was a lot easier to do. I tweaked it here and there, but basically it was a template that went from one page to another, etc. And everything was kind of laid out. And that's really key. So it's a software that enables you to create these funnels quickly. And it's reliable, and people have done it lots and lots of times and made money. So
that kind of gets you out of employing a web designer.
Yeah, it is aimed at those people who, not necessarily. You might still want somebody who can design a good looking funnel, and that's not to be sniffed at. But there's so much science behind ClickFunnels, in the sense of they call it funnel hacking for a reason. Because if there's a good funnel out there, then what they teach you to do is to hack it, not to steal from it, but to effectively understand how that funnel works. So, and many ways of the ways in which you potentially could do that is actually going through a competitor's funnel and actually buying the product. So one of the things that if it's a summit, then actually, signing up for the summit. So basically, and what you're doing at each stage is having a look at how have they put that together. So, what are the words that they're using? Again, you don't copy, but you are inspired by the design. So that's really important, is to be inspired in a way that creates a design that people would want to actually buy from. So ClickFunnels is great for that. And there's a lot of support in and around the product, but it isn't cheap. I mean, you're looking about, if you were just to buy it, I think it's $297 a month. But I was hooked into a rate when I bought the product, which is a bit lower than that. But nonetheless, it's not for the price of a prawn cocktail. It basically, you have to find the money to pay for that.
And I think about Grow CFO on the other hand, and knowing that if you've got a website that gets a certain amount of traffic coming towards it, and let's face it, you send out emails to a pretty big audience, which you're going to by the time you get all of these people jumping in on, you get traffic coming to your website. You need solid hosting. I guess ClickFunnels is in the cloud, comes with its hosting already.
Yeah,
so that's $1 billion.
Yeah, it saves a lot of money.
I build everything with WordPress with loads and loads of plugins. Those plugins cost us money every month.
No,
so
I actually,
when you say you get it all for $297, it's not necessarily that expensive.
No, and you get a lot for your money. Well, one of the things that you'd want to consider, Kevin, is in ClickFunnels, is using ClickFunnels 1.0, because that has a solution in it called Backpack, and Backpack enables people to earn affiliate commission, and it tracks affiliate commission all the way through. So, for instance, my offer is an all access pass, so it's 50% of that, an order bump, which is the summary of the notes. People just want notes sometimes. There's £12.50 for that. And then the last thing is an upsell of an investor course, which is normally sold at £500, but it's been reduced to £199. Now, anybody who buys that, half of it goes to the affiliate. So effectively, you potentially have a total value of £270, half of which would go to an affiliate. All of that is managed within Backpack. So I would know exactly, if you, as an affiliate, how much to pay you. So it's all done. So the key thing that about ClickFunnels, it covers an awful lot of what you require, but it's not just ClickFunnels. You also need to host the video, and the best place for that, in my view, is Vimeo. And the reason for that is that when you're at the end of a video in YouTube, all these other videos that you've been watching or you've searched or whatever, they all come up at the end. Don't want that. Yeah. So you can, within Vimeo, you can actually set that end screen to be empty. So you watch the video and then there's nothing there. So that's one little example. So Vimeo,
and the other reason you go for Vimeo is privacy.
Yes.
There's no way that you can make a video in YouTube totally private. Because anytime anybody who's got access to it watches it, there's the ability then to share it.
Yes.
And it's not listed in YouTube, it's not indexed in YouTube. Now, Vimeo, you can turn that off. Now, we put all Grow CFO training videos in Vimeo because they're all behind the membership paywall. And you want your second, I don't suppose you'd mind if the first interview got shared because that publicized the summit, but you don't want that second interview that you're saying you can only get this with an all-access pass.
Well, I don't want either, to be honest with you, because basically, if they watch the free-to-air videos on the day, that's fine. That's my offer ticked.
They're only available on the day.
On the day. So basically, anything other than that, it's a paid product. So from that point of view, there are reasons for Vimeo, and that's the classic one, because you can literally hide it from Vimeo. You can't find it, but it's there, and the link to that particular video can be created within your private members area or membership area. So that's really important. A lesson, Kevin, I had to learn. I just didn't know anything of this. So Vimeo is one of them. I know you've used Calendly for a long time, but I needed to use Calendly to arrange my interviews. So I had to go to my guests and say, here's my interviews. sign up. So they would sign up using Calendly, and that would give them all the information that they required to come along and do a Zoom interview, etc. You can combine Zoom with Calendly. So yes, I've just mentioned Zoom. You want something like Calendly to manage your diary, and you really do need to manage your diary.
Yeah. And I've used it I started using it just to give folk the ability to book a podcast recording. And I managed to limit that to very specific times of the day that you and I were both keeping clear in our diary.
Yeah,
Grow CFO came along. I'm using it to manage times that I'm having meetings with people on Zoom that are outside anything else that's in my diary. It's the great way of being able to effectively manage your time and allow people access to your diary, but also limit people's access to your diary so they can't just book something. And I don't like doing meetings in the morning, for example. So I limit all my meetings in Calendly to the afternoon usually.
Well, and that's your gift. Now, the other things that you would need as well is an email provider, effectively. And I've chosen, mainly through Bailey's recommendation, Active Campaign. Now, Active Campaign, again, is one of those paid monthly things, but the actual amount that you pay varies according to the number of contacts that you have. So effectively, I've limited my number of contacts, and I'm paying a monthly fee on the basis of that number of contacts. So the key thing there is you need that. Why do you need that? Because when somebody's made a purchase, then you'd want an email to go back and say thank you for that purchase, etc. Now that can be done in ClickFunnels, but the opportunity to do sort of broadcast emails and so forth, that type of thing, that and autoresponder, all of that is wrapped up in Active Campaigns, and it's a pretty easy join. So you can join the
same reason. My choice is to use ConvertKit. Many of the same things as Active Campaign. I personally always thought Active Campaign was a bit expensive for what it did, but then again, I haven't looked at it at the level you have, and I went for ConvertKit. We've used ConvertKit, and I think we've probably got to the point we've outgrown its capability because we've got so many things going through it.
Oh, well, I mean, that's nice to know, because basically if you're using it to its capacity, then you're obviously getting value. But in my case, I'm learning all the time about how to use this. And so I'm not an expert, but the expert suggested I need Active Campaign. So there's a level of learning here that in almost every single aspect of a summit, you have to accept that you need to learn things. And it will take a bit of time and energy. So Bailey has a sort of a course that says you can get this done in 90 days. Call it 100 days, right? You can get this done in the next 100 days. But it was more like 200 for me. And the reason for that was that, I was also running a business, and that it wasn't just, and actually things took longer than I thought. I'll give you an example. When it comes to things like closed captions, etc. So you're doing the video, but you then in Vimeo you can actually it produces closed captions. But an example. My name is Arrowsmith, ARROWSMITH. But in the world of Vimeo, my name is Arrowsmith, or Arrowsmith, AARA Smith. Or all kinds of different
this happens with AI is getting pretty good, but this sort of auto caption thing happens every time you've got a product name, unless you really train it. I mean, it took me ages to train Otter AI what Grow CFO was and get it right every time I said it.
Right.
So when you get a brand name like that, and you'll get brand names all over the place in investment products that will need to be taught into the system.
Or if you talk about fine wine, descriptions of bottle names, French bottle names, and you just think, good. So you had to literally edit otherwise you'd look a little bit daft.
Yes.
And I didn't want to look daft. Now, don't get me wrong. there will be the occasional words that are wrong, but there's only so much time you have in the world. So the whole idea of this is that there's so many different aspects to master, and once you've got that done, then you've got half a chance.
So we've talked about just the things outside of any IT at all, getting hold of the guests, getting the videos recorded and edited. We've talked about the financial situation, the getting the guests to bring an audience with them.
Yes.
We've talked about having then a platform, because all of that's going to be based around affiliate commissions, a platform that can handle that video, that affiliate commission all the way through, handle the finances.
Yeah.
We've talked about the technical need to kind of have a platform as well that builds a website that can put things available on the day behind a paywall.
Yeah.
We've talked about, you mentioned Stripe in terms of getting money off people. You mentioned Vimeo as far as hosting the videos securely.
Yeah.
And we've mentioned an email provider, in your case, ActiveCampaign, in mine, ConvertKit. That's a lot to get your mind around, Graham. There's a lot of moving parts there.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a lot for somebody with a 3 at the beginning of their age, and as in 30-something. But for a 60-something, it just feels a little bit more. But at the end of the day, it keeps you young, and it gives you that sense of, I can still do this. And you just have to. Sometimes you get, inevitably, I'll be honest with you. Sometimes I've got very frustrated with myself that not being able to think it through. But thank goodness people like Bailey exist, because she was awesome and has been awesome all the way through. In the sense
that to get Bailey on the podcast, Graham.
Well, I've invited her, and I think she would make this type of podcast come alive, because it's her thing. But there's other things to what she does in the world. But the benefit of a summit is that you potentially could serve your audience and create yourself as something of an authority. And if you do, that means that your people are going to be attracted to you. And I hope, and that's already happening. They've seen me doing this, and people are saying, "Can you help me?"
We've talked a lot of the time about creating authority through writing a book. This is another huge area that you can create yourself authority by running a summit, being the person that's seen to be holding this together. In the same way as we've created authority by doing so many podcasts together.
Very much, and that for us, it's not about so much the money, but the authority and the links that come with that are very important. So, if you're looking to do a summit, then there's lots of things to do, but boy, it's good when it comes together.
I am. All I can say at this stage is I can now see all of the hard work that's gone into this. I know you and I have been talking in the background about this summit for months and months and months, and I've been thinking, what's Graham doing? Why isn't this thing like it?
Yeah.
And when we talk about it like this, I can see why that is the case. And certainly if I can see why a summit is so powerful, but I can also see why don't take it lightly in terms of the amount of effort involved to put it together. It is massive.
Yeah.
Graham.
Yeah.
Graham, I really, really hope this summit works for you. We'll put another link to the summit in the show notes if you're interested in alternative investments. Graham, thank you hugely for being the guest on our own podcast this week.
Well, thank you, Kevin. I guess all that remains for me to say is I've been Graham Arrowsmith.
I've been Kevin Appleby. Goodbye.
Goodbye.